Hey guys, welcome back to Jessin Reads Romance. I'm Jessin. Today I'm going to be talking about the books that I want to read in July. As usual, I'm going to kick it off with our podcast books. Last month I announced what our first episodes in July were going to be. I'm so excited because those have already been recorded, they're uploaded, they're ready to go. So I'm actually going to be announcing our August episodes, which I'm very excited for. August is basically going to be an Elsie Silver month. We're going to be talking about Flawless, Heartless, Powerless. Originally I had Reckless on here, but if you've watched my June wrap up, then you know that Reckless didn't quite work for me. It wasn't like as amazing as I hoped it would be, so I did replace the last one with The Brazen by Devoney Perry. So I will be rereading all of these. I've already read all of them and I'm really excited to reread Flawless and Heartless. Especially I do need to get the audiobook for Powerless. I already have it for the first two, but the audiobooks, if you've not listened to the audiobooks for these, they're like 1,000% worth it. I love them so much. I feel like, how many times have I reread these books already? Definitely 2 for both Flawless and Heartless. So this would be the 3rd time that I'm rereading them in a very short time span. I'm not mad about it. So if you've been under a rock and you haven't heard of these romances by Elsie Silver, Flawless is the first one, and it starts off with a bull rider and his agent's daughter who's kind of assigned to babysit him. So that's our first couple, forced proximity. She's kind of acting like she's making sure that he's not going to make any headlines because he's had a little scandal pop up and they're trying to rehab his reputation. And she ends up by going to his family's ranch and meets the rest of his siblings, which this whole series is about this family. The next book is about his older brother, and he's a single dad. He's a person he's the head of the family. He's very serious and he feels like great responsibility. And this is an age gap romance and also a nanny romance, which I feel like that's like a big combination this year. Heartless is my favorite out the series, but we still have one more book left to go in the series until I have like a definitive ranking of which book is my absolute top favorite. So can't wait for that. And then of course Powerless is a friends to lovers romance, and I really love friends to lovers romances. I find it a little bit hard to find ones that I really love, but this one was just really beautiful. They had a childhood connection, but they haven't really hung out that often in recent years. He is a professional hockey player and she is a ballerina, and she's actually engaged to marry somebody else. So of course she doesn't end up by marrying him. And they end up by they do go on a little bit of a road trip, just a brief one, but they really are just kind of reconnecting, and I thought it was beautiful. So I wanted all 3 of these books on the podcast. And then The Brazen by Devoney Perry. This is part of her Calamity Mountain series, and this one starts off as an enemies to lovers relationship. The hero, he has inherited this basically real estate empire from his grandfather who recently passed away, and they have an interesting history. He was very close to him, but in recent years something has happened, which it's a bit of a mystery, so I won't spoil that for you. And then the heroine is actually a local real estate agent, and she is trying to buy property and like renovate a lot of the old buildings that are in disuse and like make them useful again, make, you know, the town a little bit more lively. And he's kind of coming in because the grandfather used to be her business partner, and he's kind of this douchebag, which she thinks is coming in to call in the loans, all of them. She doesn't have the money to just pay it all back. So it starts off like that. And then there's another trope that's included. A little bit of a spoiler, so I'm not going to say what it is, but read it to find out. Those are our podcast books. Now, the books that I'm reading for Patreon, I put all the suggestions on a spinner wheel and spun for 2 books for the month. The first one is The Undertaking of Heart and Mercy. I have had this book I don't want to say I've had it on a TBR in the past, but I've been intrigued, but I never really quite picked it up. And this is supposed to be a little bit paranormally, and I believe enemies to lovers. I'm a weird one. Sometimes I don't want to read the synopsis to a book, so I just don't, and I decided not to, but I do know Heart and Mercy are the actual main characters, and one of them is like an undertaker. They work with dead bodies. So that's our first one, and thank you so much to Kristen for recommending that one. And then I also have Where Dreams Begin by Lisa Kleypas. And I also have been doing a challenge for this year to read her whole backlist. So I was pretty excited because this one, it covers my one Lisa Kleypas book for the month, but I'm also behind. So I'll probably be picking another one for that challenge, and this will be exclusively for Patreon and not count towards the book that I have to read this month to kind of catch up. But this one is about a widow. She has, I think it was 3 years ago that she lost her husband. I actually started reading it this morning. 3 years ago, she lost her husband. She has a daughter, and she's still in mourning. Like, she had a really great relationship with her husband, and he died suddenly of typhoid fever. She goes to her first ball that she's been since she's been in mourning. His family's been really great and was like, let's get out the house, let's go do something. At the ball, she's interacted, but she's starting to get a migraine, so she decides to leave. The carriage is going to take a little while to get there. So her brother-in-law suggests, there's going to be some private rooms near the entrance. Just go like rest there until the carriage is at the front door. When she goes to this room, a man comes out from the shadows and embraces her. He thinks that she is the woman that he's meeting, and they end up by sharing a kiss. And she is kind of stunned that she actually enjoys this. So it's a little bit of a mystery identity and also different social classes, because the hero is Zachary Bronson. He has worked his way up from nothing. He used to live in the slums. He's trying to take care of his mom and his sister. And he started prize fighting, and now he's an investor. And she is a lady. She was the daughter of an earl, but he wants her. So he kind of like strong arms her into being in his life. And I'm very excited to see where the story leads. I'm intrigued so far from what I've read of like the first couple of chapters. And then we have our new releases for the month. Sarah Kate is starting a brand new series, The Good Brothers. And Sarah Kate's pretty known for her more salacious romances, her kinky romances and stuff like that. So I am expecting something kind of in line with Priest, especially with the storyline, but it's different. It's not like a preacher romance. As far as I know, it's not. The hero's dad is actually the prominent preacher, and he has been discovered, a scandal has rocked the family. The dad was discovered to be a member of a local kink club. So our hero, his faith is kind of shaken. I'm sure it seems like they've been raised to be God-fearing men, shun anything like sex and kink and all that jazz, anything like unseemly. And all of a sudden, his dad is not who he thinks he is. So it seems like he's on a revenge quest to kind of ruin his father's reputation further, maybe? And he and the girlfriend of the owner of the club come up with a plan to like do fake dating and, I don't know, film some videos or something. So we'll see how this turns out. I feel going into this book very kind of middle of the road. I'm not expecting something amazing, but I'm also willing to be surprised, right? Willing to be surprised. So that book comes out July 14th. Then we have How to Tame a Wild Rogue by Julie Ann Long. This is a 6th book in one of her series. I forgot what it's called. I have not read the previous books in the series. Am I gonna go back before I read this one? I don't know, because this does come out at the end of the month, July 25th. I might have time. It is 6 books though, but it's the Palace of Rogues series. The heroine is a jilted bride, and she needs to marry somebody who has wealth to save her family. Very common storyline that I think works wonderful in historical romances, because it often leads to kind of fake dating, fake relationships, or marriage of convenience, which I love. And the hero may be a shady character that is a commoner, but he's worked his way up and might be the leader of a shady empire, possibly. One night there's a storm, and he saves her, and there is, I don't know if it's an inn, it sounds like something else though, but there's only one room left, and they have to pretend to be married to be able to share the room. Only one bed, fake marriage, and I don't know where it goes from there, where the story goes after this one night. But I am intrigued. I have loved Julie Ann Long in the past, and I did want to read more of her series. So I don't know, I might go back to the first one before I even get to this one. Who knows? And then the final one is Resonant Surge by Nalini Singh. This is like the 22nd book in her Psy-Changeling series. It's also categorized as a 7th book in her Trinity series, but if I'm being honest, as a Nalini Singh fan and as a Psy-Changeling fan, I honestly don't know. If you're a person that has started reading these books in the Trinity section of the series, didn't you understand what was going on? Like, I don't know, I feel like you need the history of like what's going on. You can't just jump into this series. I mean, 22 books. They're all very, very, very interconnected. I'm very intrigued by our hero and heroine. So we're gonna return to the Bears. We've only had 1 book. 1 book? No, 2 books, I'm sorry. 2 books featuring Bear Shifters. I'm honestly most intrigued by our Psy heroine, Theodora. She's the twin of a very powerful man, Pax. And I forget which book it was in. I think it was in Wild Rain, where we first are introduced to Pax, and then we have a little bit of a revelation at the end about Pax being a twin and his sister, and there's something going on with like that twin bond that makes their Psy abilities very unusual. So I'm very intrigued by Theodora. I hope eventually we'll get a book for Pax, but I think that this is one step closer to understanding what's going on with Pax. He's probably the most intriguing side character that I've seen in a long time since the original series. Of course, we had our couples that we were anticipating, like Hawk. I was dying to read Hawk and Sienna's book, and then of course Caleb Krychek being in the background. Fingers crossed that he would have a book and stuff like that. So I feel like Pax is kind of that person for me in this new portion of the series. Ever since I read Wild Rain, I was like, he's a character that I'd be very interested to see more of in the background, built up in the background. So I'm excited because that's like one step closer now that we're going to get a book with where his sister is the heroine, one step closer to figuring out what's going on with Pax. But I absolutely love Changeling and Psy pairings. It's my favorite pairing in the series. Of course, we've had our Changeling pairings, Psy pairings. Psy is my least favorite. I like the dynamic with changelings and Psys because the changelings tend to provide like the warmth and the emotion in the pairings, and Psys just don't work for me. They've been my least favorite. Anyway, I digress. I got like on a tangent about Psy Changeling, but it is one of my ultimate comfort read series, so quite passionate about it. And then I have 2 arcs that I want to read for this month. One of them, the one by Carla Sorensen, doesn't come out until October, but I still want to read it this month. I'm a little bit intrigued because this series, the Best Men series, is one that she's writing with Amazon's imprint Montlake. So I think it's her first kind of more traditional series that she's writing. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't believe that she has any other traditionally published books. The rest of her series that she's written in the past have been completely indie. So the best laid plans, our hero Burke, he used to be a former football player for the Dallas Cowboys, and he's had an injury which forced him into early retirement. And it seems like he has a lot of like stuff in his past that he doesn't want to deal with. And when his best friend and his wife dies suddenly, and the house that they recently purchased, which just so happened to be the best friend's grandparents' house that he's always dreamed of owning and restoring, that has been willed to Burke. Burke's plans is to move to Florida with his sister, so he really doesn't want to have this house because it needs to be renovated and he just doesn't want to deal with it. And the heroine is Charlotte. She's a restoration expert. Since it's a historical building, there's certain parameters that need to be taken into consideration when restoring it. If you make it too modern, then I don't think that you're eligible for like certain tax cuts, but she's like really passionate about historical buildings and historical accuracy. So they kind of like clash, and I'm excited about it. I'm very intrigued. I want to read it, which is why I'm not going to wait until closer to the release date. I'm probably going to read it this month. And finally, we have An Earl to Remember by Stacy Reid, one of my favorite historical romance authors. This one is coming out in August, the 22nd. And the plot line sounds like an Overboard retelling, like an Overboard storyline. If you've never watched Overboard before with Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell, I love that movie so much. And they remade it like a couple of years ago. And then last year I read Elisa Kleypas' book in her backlist that was actually also an Overboard kind of retelling, and I really liked it. So I'm very intrigued, but it seems like the hero has amnesia, something happened, and the heroine was his former maid that recently got fired. And when he comes to, he recognizes the maid. He doesn't know who she is, just that he knows that she is familiar. So she decides to act like his wife. So I'm very intrigued by this one. It sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. And then of course I have my 12 Friends challenge. I decided that I'm not going to pick a particular book. I'm just going to start picking up some of them and read the first chapter and see which one kind of speaks to me as a mood reader. And I feel like, because I'm very, very, very behind on that particular challenge. And then Lisa Kleypas, I'm also going to read the synopsis for the rest of the books and see which one feels like I want to read it the most as well. Because my goal for July is to read a lot more kind of planned books, but make it feel like mood reading. So yeah, That's how I'm gonna try to mitigate the tendency that I have to not want to read books that are actually on my TBR just because it's like, it feels like it's a chore. Even though these are books that I want to read, just the fact that I've made a list of them and I feel like I need to check it off, it makes me have the don't want sometimes. So I'm trying something different this month. But anyway, those are the specific books that I definitely want to read, and hopefully, fingers crossed, I can do all of them and I stay on track. But let me know what you're excited to read in the month of July. If there's some new releases that you're really excited about, a new author that you've just discovered and you want to read more of, drop that in the comments down below. If you like this video, give it a big thumbs up. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, make sure you subscribe to get notified of any future videos that I do. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, life's better with a little HEA. Bye guys.